welcome this evening, folks, to another virtual VocalEye. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that VocalEye is broadcasting to you all this evening into your homes from the unceded, ancestral, occupied, and stolen territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And as we all have the privilege here of joining through the magic of Zoom, see, Donna, I told you it was a magical show. The magic of Zoom. Please take a moment when you have a chance to acknowledge the lands that you are settled on. And I know that I personally feel privileged to live on these lands and acknowledge those who took care of the lands before I arrived. My name is Amy. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for VocalEye Descriptive Arts Society. And tonight is a Wednesday. It's March the 24th, and we're celebrating our 38th virtual VocalEye. Tonight, we're going to have a visit from Early Music Vancouver and have a little taste of Baroque music. So really excited about that. And the preview for next week, as I'm, kind of name dropping, is our community's own Kim Kilpatrick will be joining us. And she's going to be sharing her piece called Raising Stanley, a story about guide dog raising and some other things. I don't want to give too much away. So that's next Wednesday night. And she's going to be joining us virtually, but all the way from Ottawa. So that's what you can expect next Wednesday. So I hope you'll join us for that as well. Before I get into introducing our guests this evening, I just want to acknowledge and deeply thank all of our donors. Without support of donors and funders, we would not be able to bring this programming to you all, and we offer this free of charge. So sincere thank you to everybody who's made a contribution. And if you are somebody who feels like you have the capacity to do so, we will post a link in the chat, and feel free to access it or not. But donations are greatly appreciated. And thanks again to those who have made generous contributions. And of course, just to remind people that we do something different every Wednesday night. And our programming is very varied, just as are the tastes of the guests that join us. So if one night is not your thing, then maybe the next week is. So you can always keep an eye, no pun intended, on our newsletters, on our website, call into our hotline, which is 1-833-LIVE-I, LIVEEYE, to find out what kind of programming is coming up next. So that's how you can find us on the WWW. What should I do next? I think I should maybe introduce Jiten. So Jiten, welcome to the space. Where are ya? Don't forget to unmute yourself as you arrive. Jiten has been in the background with VocalEye for, gosh, how many months has it been now, Jiten?
Since beginning of October.
Beginning of October. So Jiten, before we introduce this piece tonight, I would love it if you would just share with our group what you've been doing with VocalEye since October, because I don't think everybody knows.
Yeah, probably not, because I've been
hiding in the background.
Yeah. So I'm a student at Adler University. I'm doing a degree in counseling psychology, and one of the things that Adler University does is, while we're in the preclinical stage, when we're not ready to actually see clients, we do work in the community. So people end up in all sorts of different organizations, and I'm spending my time with VocalEye.
Awesome. Jiten's been working hard behind the scenes on a couple of projects. One of them is the crowdsourced description project that I've sort of dropped a few hints along the way, and we'll talk about at some other point. But I want to focus on what we're doing here this evening, because our time is limited together before we hit that magical play button. Jiten, what are we experiencing tonight? This is a Early Music Vancouver, which I admit I don't know a lot about, but I know you're going to share with us, and a taste of Baroque. So first off, what is Early Music Vancouver?
Yeah, great question. So Early Music Vancouver, they present historically informed performances of different kinds of music. It's tended to be very much focused on Western classical and Baroque music, but have started to expand the programming into music from other parts of the world, like Iranian classical music, Chinese classical music, and some contemporary music as well. What we're going to hear tonight is more sort of that bread and butter of Baroque music from Western Europe, so Germany and Italy. And the thing I mentioned, historically informed performance which is sort of a mouthful. So I should probably explain that. What it means is that instead of, I think a lot of us are familiar with Baroque music. Maybe we've heard the Four Seasons, or we've heard Handel's Messiah. What might be a little less familiar is hearing it on actual Baroque instruments, because the modern orchestra with modern violins and modern flutes and that sort of thing, there's a lot of innovations. The strings that they use are different than they were in the 1700s. The bows are different. The way they tune is different. So that's sort of the idea behind Early Music Vancouver, and lots of other orchestras and music presenters around the world, is that they want to sort of get back to that original style of performing as much as we can.
I love the concept of this. I love the sound of Baroque music, although I don't know a heck of a lot about the genre in particular. So I love that you've broken down for us some of the differences in the instruments, and I have a feeling we might unpack some of that a little further as we introduce our second guest of the evening a little bit later. So why do this, Jiten? Why? What's the appeal?
Yeah, it's I imagine different people have different answers. I mean, for me, I was somebody who, I'm a violinist. I learned the modern violin, as most people do. I went to university, and then when I was doing my master's, I thought, well, there's this other thing I can do, which is sort of like learning a new instrument, and it's gonna maybe make me approach this repertoire that I'm already know in a new way. I think that's in classical music, when we're we run into the same pieces a lot of the time. I've played most of those Beethoven symphonies a whole lot. So anything that sort of gives us an opportunity to see it in a new light, and maybe give us reason to play it differently than the standard approach is really exciting.
Yeah, you kind of got me I guess kind of rared up to experience this, because again, you're providing me with layers that I didn't have in my own imagination or musical repertoire, as you will. So tell us a little bit about this. It's a video that's been filmed. So where is it that you're performing, and talk a little bit about, because I imagine this was filmed during a time where social distancing was a thing that had to be considered, maybe. So just maybe share a little bit about what venue you're at, and a bit about how the filming process went.
For sure. Yeah, this was recorded at the Chan Center. It actually was recorded a really long time ago. This is from last June. So what happened was, Early Music Vancouver, I think, was maybe one of the first arts organizations to decide that they were going to try to mount a full season, in spite of COVID. So they, gathered everybody in the socially distanced in the Chan Center, and came up with a way of recording, I think, something like 14 concerts in 2 weeks.
Wow.
I might be getting the numbers wrong there, but and they've added a few more since. So what they've been doing since I think about mid-September is every 2 weeks they post another virtual concert on YouTube, and all of them are there free of charge. Obviously, they are accepting donations. So yeah, this is one of those. I think this is like number 14 in that. I should probably have figured out these numbers, but we're somewhere in there. Yeah.
Well, and I, excuse me, would imagine that we might, provide some links maybe in the follow-up email, so people can check out some of the other concerts and how to access those if this is a music genre that you absolutely love. And I know that there are many here tonight that are in love with this kind of music. So, Jiten, I want you to maybe prime our ears a little bit if we're not so familiar with Baroque music. Is there something particular we should be listening for? Or what might we hear in a piece like this? Maybe the kinds of instruments that are being played in this first piece that we're going to experience?
Sure. Well, one of the reasons I think this is maybe a good starting place for somebody who's not familiar with this kind of music is that we're going to start really small. So the first piece is it features a violin. a Violin Sonata, and she's going to be accompanied by 2 bass instruments. So what that means in Baroque music, there's this thing where instead of it just being a violin and piano, it's violin and basso continuo, which is an Italian word, which just means any instruments that can play the bass line. So in this case, it's going to be a harpsichord, which is an instrument that a lot of us have probably heard, maybe in a Broadway musical or something like that, but it's a lot like a piano. It's the predecessor of a piano. The main difference is that instead of the strings being hit with a hammer, which is how a piano works, they're actually plucked. So keyboard instrument as well, but it has a really different timbre. The other instrument that you'll hear, the other bass instrument that you'll hear, is called a Viola Gamma, which this, a lot of the instruments we hear have modern equivalents, like violins and flutes and violas. This one does not really. It kind of looks like a cello. It's about the same size as a cello. It sits in the player's lap, but it's actually got 7 strings, and it's fretted as well. So kind of like a guitar, violins and cellos, they just have, there are no little bumps on the fingerboard, and that's different on the Viola da Gamba.
Okay, that's a lot for me, just because I'm not a musician. So,
yeah.
I certainly appreciate it, because I actually would have thought that something like a cello or a violin had the little sort of raised edges that you hold the strings against. Those are the frets. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, exactly.
Frets?
Yeah. And I'll give you one more thing, because the interesting part about this, and I think this is one of those things where people start to get excited about Baroque music, is that if you think about it, these 2 instruments are playing the same line. So, but what you'll hear is that the harpsichord is playing a whole bunch of different notes. So what they're actually doing is figuring out all the harmonies as they go along. One way of that an audience member explained it to me is that it's like, well, it's a lot more like playing jazz, that they are improvising as they're going. They have the bass line that they're following, but 2 different harpsichordists playing the same piece are going to sound really different.
Right. Oh, I love that. I'm getting little goosebumps on my arm, because it's I'm really excited to sort of experience the improv of the music in this style. Who is the composer of this piece, Jiten, and what is the piece called?
So the first piece you're going to hear is the Violin Sonata, is by Corelli, Arcangelo Corelli, Italian composer. And then you're going to hear another piece, which is a little bit shorter, by a composer named Janitsch. And I got to admit, I don't know much about Janitsch. But luckily, that's why we're going to have another little talk afterwards with somebody who I think knows more about it.
Wonderful. I'm so excited about this. Again, not a genre that I'm overly familiar with, but I'm curious in my own ears if I can hear the difference in some of the Baroque style instruments, because I don't know that I'm well versed enough to know the difference. But I think that, you've pointed out excellently sort of some of the differences, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to be listening with a keen ear to see how I hear these pieces. So friends, it's 7 o'clock, and without further ado, I'm going to ask Rick to hit play, and we're going to experience these first couple of pieces, which I think are about 20-ish minutes long, and then we'll come back and do another short Q&A with one of the performers in the piece. Thank you, Jiten. Rick, when you're ready, you can hit play.